In the year 1270, under the merciless sun of North Africa, a king of France lay dying far from his homeland. His army was collapsing, his crusade was failing, and his body was burning with fever. Yet his lips whispered not of Paris, not of his crown, but of a city he had never ruled, Jerusalem. This was Louis IX, warrior, judge, crusader, saint, the only French king canonized by the Church. But sainthood did not come without blood, obsession, and catastrophic failure. This is not a story of simple holiness. This is the story of a man who believed God had chosen him personally and was willing to sacrifice an entire kingdom to prove it. Louis was born on April 25, 1214, in the royal chateau of Poissy, near Paris. France was a kingdom trembling with uncertainty. King Philip II Augustus, Louis's grandfather, had expanded French power, but Europe was unstable. The Crusades had already failed multiple times. Jerusalem was lost. The idea of holy war still haunted Christian kings. Louis was the fourth son of King Louis VIII and Queen Blanche of Castile. No one expected him to rule, but fate, as it often does, was already clearing his path. One by one, his older brothers died in childhood. By the time Louis was 11 years old, he was the heir to the French throne. From the beginning, his life was shaped not by knights, but by faith. Queen Blanche of Castile was not merely a regent, she was a force of nature. Fiercely intelligent, deeply religious, and utterly ruthless when necessary, she raised Louis with one terrifying principle. She told him plainly it would be better for her to see him dead than to see him commit a mortal sin. Louis learned to fear God before he learned to fear enemies. He was trained in Latin scripture, church law, and moral discipline as intensely as other princes trained with swords. He fasted, he prayed, he confessed obsessively. This was not weakness, it was conditioning. When King Louis VIII died in November 1226, Louis was only 12 years old. The crown was placed on a child's head, and France smelled blood. A child king surrounded by wolves, 1226 to 1234. The great nobles of France rebelled almost immediately. They believed a boy king could be controlled or destroyed. Armies gathered, alliances formed, the kingdom stood on the brink of civil war. Blanche of Castile acted without mercy. She rode from city to city, rallying loyalty, bribing some nobles, crushing others. She used diplomacy where possible, force where necessary. By 1234, the rebellions were broken. Louis watched all of this in silence. What he learned was clear. Power existed only to serve divine order. The making of a holy king. Louis officially came of age in 1234. He married Margaret of Provence in May of that year. The marriage produced 11 children, but it was never a romantic union. Louis's true devotion was elsewhere. He attended multiple masses every day. He washed the feet of the poor. He fed beggars with his own hands. He wore hair shirts beneath his royal robes. He believed suffering purified the soul. But France prospered. Louis reformed the legal system. He outlawed private wars among nobles. He expanded royal courts. Under an oak tree at Vincennes, he personally listened to the complaints of peasants and nobles alike. By the 1240s, Louis IX was the most powerful Christian king in Europe. And then, death came for him. The vow, 1244. In December 1244, Louis IX fell gravely ill at Pontoise. His fever was so severe that courtiers believed he had died. Priests administered last rites. His body lay motionless. Then suddenly, Louis revived. In what he believed was a divine vision, Louis vowed that if God spared his life, he would lead a crusade to reclaim Jerusalem. This vow would doom tens of thousands. Preparing for Holy War, 1245 to 1248. Louis spent 3 years preparing what would become the Seventh Crusade. He raised enormous funds, sold loyal lands, imposed taxes, and built a massive port at Aigues-Mortes. France was drained to fuel a holy obsession. On August 25, 1248, Louis IX sailed from France with an army of nearly 15,000 men. The target was not Jerusalem, it was Egypt. The Seventh Crusade, invading Egypt, 1249. Louis believed Egypt was the key to the Holy Land. If Cairo fell, Jerusalem would follow. In June 1249, the Crusader army landed in Damietta. The city fell almost without resistance. Louis believed God was rewarding his faith. He was wrong. Mansurah, the disaster, 1250. In February 1250, Louis marched toward Cairo. At the city of Mansurah, his army walked into a trap. Muslim forces led by the Mamluks counterattacked with brutal efficiency. Disease ravaged the Crusaders, supplies failed, chaos consumed the camp. On April 6, 1250, Louis IX was captured. A king of France became a prisoner. Humiliation and ransom. Louis was imprisoned in chains. His army was slaughtered or captured. To secure his release, France paid an enormous ransom and surrendered Damietta. Released in May 1250, Louis did not return home. Instead, he stayed in the Holy Land. 4 years in the East, 1250 to 1254. Louis ruled as a pilgrim king in Acre. He rebuilt fortresses, negotiated truces, protected Christian settlements, but Jerusalem remained lost. In 1254, Louis finally returned to France. The just king. Back in France, Louis became a legend. He expanded justice, reformed coinage, banned judicial duels, and strengthened royal authority. In 1259, he signed the Paris Treaty with England, ending decades of war. France entered a golden age. But Louis was restless. The Final Crusade, 1270. In 1270, against all advice, Louis launched the Eighth Crusade. The target was Tunis. The campaign was a catastrophe. Disease spread rapidly. Dysentery devastated the army. On August 25, 1270, Louis IX died. He was 56 years old. Saint and shadow. In 1297, Pope Boniface VIII canonized Louis IX. He became Saint Louis. Churches were named for him. Cities carried his name. But his legacy remains divided. He was a man of justice and mercy, and a king whose faith led thousands to their deaths. Louis IX believed God spoke directly to kings. History still argues whether God answered him at all.